All right, good morning, everyone. Today is January 22nd, 2021, and this is the Fair Political Practices Commission Digital Transparency Task Force meeting. This morning we have Ms. Apostle helping us out. So, Ms. Apostle, would you please call the roll?
Brian Brokaw.
Present.
Rena Davis.
Present.
Gail Kaufman. Thad Kauser. Amber Maltby. James Schwab. Jenny Wagner.
This is Katie Zoglin. She's trying to get on, but would appreciate it if a link to this session could be resent to her. She's trying to get on, but she can't find the link.
Katie Zoglin.
Present.
Abby Wood.
Present.
And Chair Manage.
Here. All right, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Item number one, this is public comment for items not on today's agenda. I would note that we do have written digital public comment we received previously from Ms. Velasquez with the Alliance for Community Engagement. Hope other task force members saw that. They have a volunteer effort digital campaign archive down in San Diego County. If you haven't taken a look at it, I think it's pretty interesting and good stuff. So I commend that to the task force. Do we have anyone on the line, Ms. Apostle? Hearing and seeing none, we'll proceed to item number two, approval of the December 2020 meeting minutes. Do any task force members have edits or comments on our December meeting minutes? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Professor Wood, thank you. I'll second. Ms. Apostle, please call the roll.
Mr. Brokaw.
Yes.
Ms. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman. Mr. Kauser. Mrs. Maltby. Mrs. Schwab. Oh, Mr. Schwab. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Zoglin.
Approve.
Mrs. Wood.
Yes.
Chair Manage.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Proceeding to item number three, this is our first informational presentation today. And first up, we have Google will be doing a presentation for us on an overview of their political advertising products and transparency report. Following that, we'll hear from representatives from Facebook, and then folks with the Clean Money campaign, and finally, emerging trends, which is something that our staff will be presenting on. So let's go ahead and kick it off with Google.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe our presentation team is still waiting in the Zoom lobby.
Okay, we're going to get that set up right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis, can you please let us know the name of the staff member from Google? I think we're having a hard time figuring out who in the waiting room to let in.
Yeah, I pinged the name to Amanda. There are actually 3 individuals. Is that Kara, Angelica, and Aaliyah?
Okay, thank you.
I think we have all of our colleagues. We should be ready to go.
Okay, great. All right, Google team, thank you very much for joining us here today. Why don't you guys go ahead and kick off your presentation.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity to present. I know we've had several great conversations, and I wanted to bring a couple of my colleagues in to present to us and give us an overview of our products, and leave some time for questions for you all to answer, or to ask, that may come up from the presentation. Unfortunately, we do have a hard stop for our team members around 10:45, so they're going to go ahead and get to it, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Aaliyah Mitchell. I'm from the Ads Product Council team, and I wanted to walk you through first the Google Ads product itself, and then also get specifically into the actual election ads product and take any questions that you have at the end. Because of the hard stop, we did kind of want to get through the presentation and then take all of the questions just to make sure that we get through everything. So I'd appreciate it if we could do that, although obviously if there's a pressing question, please do ask.
Great.
I'm not sure if Rena, if you're able to project the slides or if they're already showing. Oh, perfect, great. If you could advance to the first one. So the Google Ads product is actually a self-service ad platform, which means that different sized advertisers are able to go in and actually use it the way that meets their needs. The advertisers actually go into the product itself and they set up their own campaign. So they'll set a budget, they'll set different goals that they want to reach. They will also determine whatever the budget is going to be, and they'll enter all of their assets, meaning they'll enter the headlines as well as the descriptions, as well as the pictures and so forth. And they use that in order to create ads of different formats. So the formats can include things like a search ad, which is one that appears when you, the user, goes to google.com or any browser and types in a search. They're the ads that appear around your search. A display ad is one that can appear on any other website. And display ads can be ones that have videos, ones that have images, ones that are fully text ads. There are different type of formats that exist. If you could advance to the next slide. So what happens is we're going to walk you through like what it actually looks like. So when an advertiser goes into their actual Google Ads account, they'll see this. They'll see a screen that says something about, what are the budgeting options and things that they'd like. So for example, if you show up and you say, I've got $1,400 and I want to have a 3-week campaign, I want to be able to, I want to only be charged when someone actually interacts with my ad. There are different options for you. You can do it in different ways. So when someone actually clicks on my ad, that's when it counts. Or you can set it up based on different targeting goals, different things. It's kind of up to you and what your goals are. If you go to the next slide. And then you'll get to a screen that actually talks about what you want your creative to look like. And what you're entering is actually your business name, your URL, so the actual destination that the user will go to if they actually click on your ad. In order to get more information or in order to buy whatever it is that you're selling, anything. And you'll actually enter in different images that can be used to create your ad. You can enter your logo, you can enter a picture that has some relationship to your product. You can enter a video, and then you also enter in different headlines and descriptions, things that could be used again to build an ad for your product. So in this one, my colleague was kind enough to actually do a mock-up of it, and she unfortunately is not here, but Emily did Emily's emus, and it's for a grooming service for the animals, emu animals. If you advance to the next slide. What happens when you put in all of that information is that, so I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the actual auction process, but when a visitor arrives at a website, that's actually unlike in print and TV, where things are pretty set. So like if you have a newspaper, the ads will appear in very specific places in it. You'll have the sizing, you'll have the specs, you'll have, is it going to appear on the sports page? Is it going to appear on the business page? Digital is different. So, and also in that process, when all of those things are preset, it means that when an advertiser gives the creative over to them, they give it already packaged because they know what sizes the ad slots are and so forth. In digital, it's different in the sense of a visitor appears on a website and the website sends out a request to different ad providers and then gives them the request. So these are machines that are talking to each other, but they're basically saying, I need a banner ad because that's the space that I have on my website, the one that goes across the top. It's a horizontal ad. It has these specific specs. They'll include other criteria in it. So it could be that, my site's a little wonky, so don't give me a video ad, only give me a picture ad, or an ad that has pictures and text in it. It might say, give me only an ad that has a maximum of 2 lines in it. Also, the IP address of the person who's appeared on my website or appeared at my address is someone that appears to be in Vancouver. So deprioritize ads for regional businesses that are more than 200 miles away from Vancouver because they won't have any relevance to this person. They'll also say they might include things like, the language is set at English. So don't give me ads that are, in French or in Spanish or whatever else. Try and prioritize ads that are in English. And it might also say things like, the website is an animal blog. So anything that might be relevant to my animal blog will be the kind of ad that's going to have more relevance to this audience possibly. So all of that criteria comes through from the website. And then the ad provider uses those criteria to look through the ads that they have. So they'll then look into their different their cache of different ad possibilities and say, what do I have that matches the criteria that the website is looking for? And they will get rid of any ads that have videos because that's what the website said. They'll look for ones that have only images, only a few lines of text or whatever else. And they'll say, hey, I've got one. So the different providers will say, hey, I have one. And there may be an action, a bidding process over it, an auction actual. And then whichever one wins is the one that actually appears on the site. Now, all of that I just described happens in a fraction of a second. It's, internet, so it's actually cool. But that's what's happening in the backdrop. And that's why instead of presenting you with a full ad, an advertiser may instead present you with the different options for you to lay it out from, because the places that it will appear are not preset, or like the specs for where it will appear are not preset. So if you look at the images that are here, you'll see 3 different options. One is a full text ad. One is an ad that has, big picture of an emu and the certain lines that are in it, like fluffiest emus in town. And there's a third one that also shows you like all together. This particular ad was for a groomer that was in Olympia, Washington. So it fits all of the criteria that the advertiser was looking for. If you advance to the next slide. Rena? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
sorry. Thank you. So if you look at this slide, we tried to put together something that was a simple version of this. And what it shows is that because the advertiser is entering different options for the ad, the final ad, there wind up being hundreds of total possible combinations of what that ad could look like, depending on like if the user is looking at it on their device, like a phone or a tablet or actual computer screen. If you advance to the next one. So Google itself has explicit terms and policies on its website. publicly, and it describes what ads are and are not allowed on our actual platform. And we remove ads that violate our policies quite frequently. We take action against bad actors. In 2019, we blocked and removed 2.7 billion ads that had violated our policies, and we suspended nearly 1 million advertiser accounts. Using automated and human review, we identified them and removed them. If you advance. The political content product itself is pretty specific, so I'm going to walk you through like how it's laid out and how it functions and so forth, including how the policies are presented, what the targeting restrictions actually are, the fact that we have a verification process, and what our transparency report actually looks like, what information you might see if you go to the product itself. If you advance. So the first thing that is pretty explicit is that we actually do have election ad policies, if you advance the slides. And this is an example of what one of the policies looks like. So we have specifically called out that for election ads, because different regions have different definitions of what a political ad might look like. So we have called out exactly what it is that comes in scope of our policy. And for us, it would be, for this particular region, it's going to be a current office holder or candidate for elected federal office, and or a candidate or office holder for state level elected office, a political party, or a measure or ballot proposition. So, and we've also identified what does not come in scope of our policy. And you'll see this for different regions, the different regions where we're launched in and where we actually provide transparency tools. If you advance to the next one. Our targeting restrictions are actually pretty specific. They're limited, and that's on purpose. We allow you to target based on geography, so a geographic location rather, age and gender, and then contextual targeting options. So keywords or topics, ad placements, we allow you to use those things, but no further. So we don't allow other types of targeting for election ads. If you advance. The verification process is, again, we have different regional requirements, but our verification process is intended to make sure that the person who is setting this ad is the person who they present themselves as. So we attempt to verify your identity, make sure that you are who you say you are. We collect documents. We check for a regulatory ID. We ask whether you're an organization or an individual. All of these things are laid out on our website. It's very specific. We explain what we're going to use that information for. And what typically happens is some of that information, which we're very open about, gets put into a paid for by ad disclosure. So the name that you have given us, we make sure that it is presented within an ad where possible. We actually put it into your ad so that users who are viewing your ad know who has actually paid for this ad. And we want to get to the actual person who's paying for it, not necessarily the doing business name as or any other alias that the person has, or even if they're working through an agency. We want the person who's actually behind the ad. And that's who we present so that the user knows exactly who's giving this message. If you advance. So then you move on to our actual transparency report. The report is actually a very nifty thing, and I would definitely advise anyone to actually go to the report and play around with it. You are able to view, this is specific to the United States, but you're able to view all the different regions that we're actually launched in. You can filter by state. You can filter by the top advertiser, either in general or top advertiser within that particular region that you're looking at. And you're able, if you advance one more, it gives you the advertiser's name. It gives you the total amount of ad that they spent. You can then click on that advertiser and go directly to their ads, like all of the ads that they've actually placed. It tells you, again, how much money they've spent on it. It tells you their targeting criteria that they actually set. So you're able to get all of that information. We present it publicly because we want, again, transparency within the election process so that you know exactly who's paying for what, how much are they paying, or how much are they spending in order to reach you, where are they trying to, which regions are they trying to actually reach. And if you advance one more time, We did get an example from the California Secretary of State to try and show you how it presents. So if you had clicked on that particular advertiser, you'll see it's a little hard to see in here, but it tells you a range of how much money the person spent, what type of ad type, what ad type was used. So this was a video. And at the very bottom, you'll see it has the ages. I realize that actually you may not be able to see it from the screenshot, but it has the ages. So the age ranges that the person set. In this particular case, it says not targeted. It shows you that they didn't target a specific gender. So they didn't set it for either male or female. And it also shows you the region. So where did they target in terms of geographic location. So all of that is available on our public tool. And that's actually it for the presentation. We wanted to leave time, obviously, for questions and so forth. So.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. That was a great presentation. I know Professor Wood definitely had a question, so perhaps we can start with her and then work our way around the task force members. So, Professor Wood.
I mean, I put it in the chat, but I may have missed something, but if you could just maybe explain again what you mean by keywords against sites as a targeting criteria. Part of what I'm concerned about is that we'll be able to kind of have candidates who, you know, target the neo-Nazis or something with a really divisive ad. And so I'm wondering what keywords against sites means and if it could be used in naughty ways. And I feel like I maybe should have prefaced with, I really feel like Google is ahead of everybody on this. And I really respect the work that you guys are doing and appreciate this presentation also. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. We are trying very hard to like put together a quality product and present it. So with respect to your specific question, when I said keyword, it could be, for example, a search ad. So when a person goes to a website to run a search for something, let's say that the person was running, I think you said your name was Ms. Wood. So let's say the person actually ran a search for your name. You as an advertiser, if you had something that you were advertising, you may have set your name as like the thing that you wanted. When somebody types in Abby Wood, you wanted them to be able to see this particular ad. So you will have bid on that particular word in order for your ad to appear if they ran that particular search. So that's the kind of thing that we mean with keyword. They're different. There's different bidding for different types of words and so forth, but that's kind of generally what we mean. With respect to, you were concerned that people would be able to actually use hate terms and so forth and use that as a way to target people. We actually have a specific policy against the use and monetization of things like hate terms, hate speech. And so we actually do make it a point to not monetize those things. That would be a violation of our actual written terms and policies on our site. So they wouldn't be able to do that specific thing, but yeah.
Cool, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Do other task force members have any questions for Ms. Mitchell?
I do.
Ms. Zoglin?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I had a quick question on your slide regarding Google Ads, the political content. And you said that the definitions vary by region. Could you explain what you mean by that? Is it by country? Is it state? Even localities have different rules on these things. So I didn't know how granular you all get there.
We do not get that granular. So what we try to do is come up with policies that we can actually follow ourselves. So we the definitions actually vary mostly by country. So for example, we'll have a definition for election ads in the UK versus a definition in Israel versus a definition in the United States. The United States also has, within the United States, we also have some where certain states have actually different requirements themselves. And so we've kind of tried to break into those. So for example, California obviously has its own rules and so forth. And so we have policies with respect to California's law itself. But no, for the general matter, we do not try and do very granular ones because we're a global company, and so our ability to be that granular is actually limited.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Wagner.
It was a great presentation, and I appreciate that you talked a little bit about how you use machines to figure out content that isn't allowed in your general ads. I'm curious for political ads. Do you have a complaints process? How do you feel that people, do you feel that people are generally satisfied that they can lodge a complaint and that it's acted on pretty quickly? I'm curious how that works within your system.
So yes, we do have a way for advertisers to, I think in general, the public is able to actually report ads that they feel are inappropriate or that are, that violate a policy in some way, shape, or form. We do have a team that goes in and looks at all of these complaints, and they do a review and are responsive to it fairly quickly. Not just fairly quickly, very quickly, actually. So there is a process for doing that. I may have missed the last portion of your question.
Yes, I'm just curious for political ads. For example, if a campaign decided to complain that maybe an ad by their competitor wasn't being processed correctly, or that it was unfair, or that it was violating your policies. And I was just curious how much of that is done by machine. You know, if somebody uploads an ad and it violates a particular country's permissions. I was just curious what that process was like a little bit, what the user experience was.
Sure. So the user will contact us, and we will look into whether the ad that they're complaining of violates one of our policies. So it could violate either the election ads policy itself, or it could violate the Google Ads terms and policies that I mentioned are pretty extensive, and they're publicly available. And we do that quite often, actually, where especially when you have a contentious, political atmosphere, it comes up quite often. And so we do have a team that's very responsive to that. And that does look into every complaint that we get. And I can't speak for advertisers, but I believe that the process is actually fairly painless. I think that they do get a response. It's not that they sit in purgatory somewhere forever and never hear from us again. We do try to be responsive and keep in contact with the person.
Thank you.
I've got another one, but I can, defer to people who have a first one.
All right. Do any other task force members other than Professor Wood have a question? If not, Professor Wood, why don't you go ahead and go?
So my seminar students just recently turned in their papers, and one of them turned in a paper that was so cool about the ads for merchandise, right? So some campaigns, one recent campaign, right, are really well, associated with like certain images, red hats, say. And so running an ad to sell something that's so closely identified with the campaign may have a very similar effect on the voters as just running any other ad that doesn't try to sell something. And so I'm wondering if I think I saw on your slides that you don't require the merch related ads to be posted, or you don't put them in your ad archive. And I'm wondering if you can just talk about the decision making behind that, if you kind of thought about it, because one thing she found is that a lot of like a high proportion of ads from some campaigns are really pushing merch. And that feels like it's a hard problem because you either want to regulate the speaker, right, and have everything the campaign does be, transparent, or you want to regulate the speech, which is more complicated. But if you have outside people making red hats too, then you may not want to you might want to allow the Etsy sellers to make their merch. You see what I'm saying? I feel like I'm not being as coherent as I could be, but
I fully understand.
It's the thought process, because I think it's a complicated problem, and it's one I hadn't thought about before.
Sure. No, it's a very interesting question. We've made a very specific choice to focus and bring into scope those ads that we are able to actually capture and make sure that they're going through the proper channels and proper process of going through the verification flow, so that we know exactly who's selling them. In defining what an election ad would be and would look like, we have chosen to say that an election ad will not include merchandise and products, or will not include ads for products and services or promotional political merchandise, as well as news from news organizations. and so forth. So their coverage of these candidates and so forth are not included within scope of the policy. And a lot of that has to do with what we're technically able to do, identify, and capture. There would be, it would be, I don't want to say impossible, but it would be nearly impossible to be able to capture every ad that features, for example, a red hat. Like imagine trying to plug that into some sort of algorithm to capture it, or to have people looking for, does the ad contain that thing that is so readily identifiable to the political party or to the political candidate? And so we've stuck with the things that we're able to actually action on, which are the ones that we've defined.
And so that means even a campaign selling merch, that ad doesn't go in your repository if it's an ad to sell merch, because that's basically just a fundraising ad, right? Because when you buy merch, like I buy a $40 hat, right? The campaign then has to report to the regulators $40 in fundraising also.
Yeah, so it means that if the ad features the candidate, if it includes the political party, if it includes a ballot initiative by that party or that candidate, it does come in scope of the policy. But if it is solely an ad that features the merchandise or is selling that merchandise, or if it's solely a news organization that is promoting the coverage of that particular candidate or of that particular political party, it does not come in scope of our policy. Yeah. Our election policy specifically. It still would be subject to our general Google Ads policies. It just wouldn't come within scope of our election ads policy.
Okay. I think that deserves more thought. I think the news organization one makes a lot of sense, right? But I think the merch thing, as the explosion of merch happens, right? And a lot of the fundraising ads actually end up looking like merch ads. I think that might deserve more thought. That's all. Because it seems like it's a lot of what a couple of them are doing, I'll be quiet. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Professor Wood. Thank you again, Ms. Mitchell. I actually have a few questions. I know we're on limited time, so I'm going to try and rapid fire through my questions here. So first question, when you're defining political ads on your platform, I note you say federal, state, ballot measures. I don't see any reference to local races. So if I'm running for city council and I run an ad on Google, is that included?
No, they're trying to remember if I'm looking up the definition just to make sure that I'm giving you the right answer. But no, I think that what was presented is correct. It would be for a federal level, a state level, or federal or state level political party, or state level ballot measure.
Okay, so if I'm running for city council, that would not be subject to your policies, correct? Correct. And I can, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say, you're probably about to go there, but is there a reason for that?
Yes, it's very hard to, as you can imagine, there are many there are many different forms of local races, and being able to support all of them is, again, something that is technically not possible at this time. It's very hard to try and support all of the different races, and each region has their own specific rules and regulations and so forth. So it just becomes very challenging, let's say, to be able to support them.
Okay, certainly understandable. All right, second question for you. In terms of the regulatory ID that you require for your political ads, I take it, for example, the FPPC ID would be such a regulatory ID. Is that correct?
I believe so. I know for sure that we do EIN, we do the FEC ID, and I believe we have state regulatory IDs as well as other forms of. I am so sorry. I don't know specifically, but yes, I do believe that we do take other regulatory IDs that we're able to check. Yes.
Okay. So now my question is, does your team actually verify, like go to in our case, the state regulatory agency or the Secretary of State's website and verify those IDs?
I believe so, yes. Yes, we do.
Okay. If somebody does not have a regulatory ID, or if they've given you a regulatory ID and you are not able to verify that, are they still allowed to run a political ad on your platform?
It depends on what information they are able to give us and they are not able to give us. So sometimes a person will try to verify with a state regulatory ID and we're not able to verify it. They may have an EIN, they may have an FEC ID. They may have a different regulatory ID that they're able to give us that we are able to verify, that we then will allow them to run under. And that ID will be the ID that appears on their ad. Like we do have, like if you go to the transparency report, it actually shows you the person's regulatory ID that they use to verify.
Okay. But I'm just teasing this out, and please don't take this at all as a criticism. This is just me kind of understanding things, right? So if we're talking about a California state ballot measure campaign, which has qualified for committee status here in California and would require them to get an FPPC ID number, if they provided your team with, let's say, their tax ID number instead of the FPPC ID number, is what you're saying you would still allow them to run that political ad because they had some type of an identification number, even if it's not the one that we issue and they're required to get?
So just to be clear, we do have a California specific policy that does it requires certain California bodies. It's subject to the California code regulation that you have that requires certain campaign. I think it's the political parties. California political parties are required to actually identify themselves under our policy. They're required to identify themselves. They're required to give certain information, very specific information to us that we then disclose as well within their in-ad disclosures. That being said, I don't know specifically for California, but that being said, an advertiser who is able to give us an ID that we are able to verify and use in order to be able to be confident that the name that they are giving us, that we are putting into their in-ad disclosure, that is the person that is paying for this ad, is the person, we do allow you to go forward. And part of that is that not only political parties and political persons are the ones running political ads. So if that makes sense, a business might be running a political ad. They will not have a state regulatory ID or a political party ID. They will have a business ID. They'll have their FEC. They'll have a different ID that they're able to give us and that they use for business purposes that we then include on their disclosure.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful to understand that. With respect to the spending data that you can access from your website, are those figures, is that monetary amount, is that how much they have spent with your platform, or are you drawing that from the reports they file with the regulatory agencies for their spending on digital ads?
That's their spend with us. That's their spend through us for their ads.
Okay.
We do not receive additional information. They're spending on other platforms or to other bodies and so forth.
Okay. Another question for you, in terms of the data that you're collecting in your archive, do you allow academic institutions or the press to access the underlying data that feeds into that archive that you have? To essentially, I mean, just think of it from the standpoint if you're an academic and you want to verify what you're seeing. Are they able to access that raw data? Are you able to provide that to them?
I don't know what you would mean in terms of the raw data. What's showing is the, I don't want to say that it's the raw data, but we are showing you what who the person is and what the person is spending, and also all of their targeting criteria. We are pretty transparent in terms of the data that we allow, and you can pull a report on it. You can there's an option for you to actually download the information that's there.
Yeah, well, I guess just teasing this out again. So suppose I'm a professor and I want to research spending on the various digital platforms. And so I go to your archive, you have that very helpful spending, which tells us how much you're reporting that they spent on your platform. If I want to, for academic integrity, want to say, okay, can you show me the invoices or the raw data so I can substantiate that archive? Are you able or willing to provide that, or is that not something that you do? And again, this is just a question. I'm not one way or the other. I'm just curious.
Of course. My understanding would be that might violate there's like an echo coming from somewhere. But my understanding would be that might violate like privacy concerns or something, that releasing the data from the actual advertiser, other than the data that we've received their consent to publicly publish and so forth, might go against our policies. And so I would say that no, you would not be able to get the raw data from it, but you are able to get all of the information that the information that is there is accurate to the best of our ability to present it. We may not present you with the invoices, but we are giving you the totals and the ranges, and the data that's available is pretty comprehensive.
Great, thank you. Last question, I promise, and this is an easy one, I think. How long do you keep the data up in the archive?
I believe I don't know. Actually, I can see it by one of my colleagues knows. I don't know though, but we have we retain the data for a certain period of time, but I'm not sure how long it actually stays up in the transparency report itself. Right now, I think it's showing everything from 2018, which is when we launched the tool. So at least for a few years.
Okay, that's great. I was just curious again. All right, mindful of the time, I see we've reached 10:46, so I kept you over for a minute there. Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. Appreciate it. Thank you to your team. Thank you, Ms. Davis, for facilitating this for us. Appreciate it. So
Thank
at this
you.
point, I think we'll go ahead and let you take off, and we will move to our next presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have our presentation from Facebook ads.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm really honored to be here. I know that Sarah, we're joined today by Sarah and Christina, who will go ahead with the presentation. We're happy to take questions after.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Appreciate
Sarah.
it.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I think we're having a bit of an echo. Folks could mute, or maybe it's just me. It seems to be getting better. Great. I am Sarah Schiff, and I've been with Facebook for over 8 years, 9 years in July. And before we get started, I just wanted to thank you all so much for inviting Facebook to today's meeting. We're super happy and grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with you. I wanted to give you some insights into how our ad system works, and then really deep dive into our policy for ads about social issues, elections, or politics, and go into some of the authenticity and transparency requirements for those ads specifically. So before I dive in, I just wanted to share our advertising principles more broadly at Facebook. And this really dictates how we approach every feature and policy that we implement. First, we build for people first. If Facebook is not a satisfactory product for people, there can be no ads. So the people come first, and making sure that we provide a best-in-class consumer experience is our first priority. We don't sell people's data. People control the ads that they see. Ads should be transparent. Advertising should be safe and civil. It should not divide or discriminate. And advertising should empower businesses big and small. And finally, we're committed to always learning, and not just learning, but improving our advertising so that it makes sense for both people and advertisers. So that's really the backbone of how we approach all of our features and products within the ads ecosystem, not just our policy for ads about social issues, elections, or politics. So I just wanted to briefly provide an overview for how ads work and how they show up. So you can imagine that a business or a campaign comes to Facebook to create an ad, and they'll usually have some idea for who they want to reach, their audience, how much they want to spend. We call that their budget. And they can use our tools, whether that's Ads Manager, Business Manager, or APIs, to set up their campaign and specify all of these components. We call this the ad creation phase. And once an advertiser creates their ad, the ad is submitted to us, and it goes through ad review. We're reviewing millions of ads each week through a combination of human and automated processes. Once the ad is approved, we figure out who should see the ad, and we call that part ad delivery. So we use factors like the relevance for the person as well as the business's budget and objective in trying to match the right person to an ad. And if you ever see an ad that's not relevant to you, you can give feedback. Every single ad on Facebook has an opportunity to give feedback directly on the ad. That's in the upper right-hand corner. You can hide the ad, or you can give us feedback as to why it wasn't relative or contributed to a negative experience for you. Our systems are making trillions of decisions per day during the ad review and delivery processes. And this signal and feedback from people is really important in making sure that that feedback loop gets better over time. We are measuring what happens and report results back to businesses. We call this ad reporting. And all the information is anonymous and aggregated. We never tell businesses the name or phone numbers of an individual, for example, who interacted with an ad or clicked. But this reporting is meaningful to businesses. It helps businesses make informed decisions about their audience, about their budget, about all of the elements of their marketing and how they might change practices going forward. And so for advertisers who want to promote their messages on Facebook, that is the overall framework. You're going to create an ad, Facebook is going to review an ad, Facebook is then going to figure out who sees that ad, matching an ad to a person, and then businesses will see results in an aggregated and privacy safe way. So that's all ads on Facebook. And there are a couple additional steps for advertisers who want to run ads about social issues, elections, or politics. And really, this is a three-step process. People and organizations are going to have to confirm identity and location, in this case, in the United States, but these tools are actually available in tens of countries and territories all around the world. And those organizations will have to specify who is responsible, who is behind the ad. That's the paid for by disclaimer and providing additional information that we can validate off Facebook to ensure that there is accountability. And the third step of that process is that the ads enter into the ad library. These are all ads about social issues, elections, or politics, and these ads are going to be available for 7 years. I know in the last presentation, there were some questions about defining political ads, the role of merchandise, how local and federal politicians play a role as being in scope of the policy or not. And so I wanted to be clear that at Facebook, in terms of how we are defining ads about social issues, elections, or politics, that is a mouthful, doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. It's hard to keep saying over and over and over again, but it is broad by design. In the absence of government regulation in this space and in the spirit of the Honest Ads Act, which we support, we do take a broader approach in defining what could influence public opinion around elections. So this is not only the quote kitchen table issues that impact our daily lives, whether that's at the local or federal level, but also holding accountable elected officials and politicians at all levels of government, whether that's local, state, or federal. We also do include merchandise from political entities, as we do see that common thread of fundraising that was discussed earlier. And in general, other products and services that may be promoted but paired with a stance on a social issue are also subject to these requirements. Again, this is not meant to be punitive. This is in the absence of regulation and guidance. We'd rather promote more transparency versus less. And we don't think that holding more ads to a higher bar for authenticity and transparency is a bad thing. So we're comfortable taking this position in the ecosystem. So now that we've talked about, how ads work on Facebook and some of the special requirements that advertisers have to follow in order to run ads about social issues, elections, or politics. Again, that's confirming their identity, providing more information about the organization, and then entering the ads into the ad library. I wanted to jump into exactly what our transparency offering looks like. So our transparency suite actually includes 3 products: the ad library report, and the ad library API. They all fulfill slightly different needs for different audiences. And so at this point, for those of you who may be on a laptop and able to multitask, you can publicly access the ad library even without having a Facebook login. It's available at facebook.com/ad library. And the ad library, is Facebook's most comprehensive ads transparency surface. It's providing a view of ads across Facebook's apps and services. And it's helping to make advertising more transparent by giving people more information about the ads that they see, but also more importantly, the ads that they don't see, because we want to make sure that even if you're outside the target audience, there is accountability for the messages in these ads. So the ad library contains a search bar, and you can search by keyword or for a specific advertiser. For example, you could keyword search something like immigration and see all of the political or social issue ads touching on that topic. But you could also, select your mayor or governor or president of the United States or vice president of the United States and see all of the advertising attributed to one specific advertiser. So we are storing these social issue, electoral, or political ads for 7 years, whether they are active or inactive. So if an ad is no longer active but was really relevant during the Iowa caucuses, that will be available for the next 7 years for the community to subject to scrutiny. So what specific information is available in the ad library? We can take that example of going to the ad library landing page, looking at that search bar, putting in your mayor or your governor or the president or the vice president. You will see all of the individual ads that are about social issues, elections, or politics. You'll see copies of the ad creative as well as performance data. So you'll see a range of spend, a range of impressions, and some demographic information like location, age, and gender for who the ad actually reached. And really what we want to emphasize here is the functionality in the ad library, which is about searching by keyword, searching by politician, searching by organization, or some other advertiser. Maybe it's a coffee shop in your local community that is taking a stance on a social issue, and you want to understand the messages in those ads. They're treated the same way. So all pages on Facebook will have a place in the ad library. You can see some aggregate information about the page that represents the organization in addition to the ads that they run. So you can see the date that the governor's page was created, for example, the date that, I'm sorry, not the date, the number and the type of page name changes that may have occurred. And that's to help lend transparency to a situation where perhaps an organization changed the name of its page repeatedly and may be misleading people about what that page is really about. We're also surfacing information like the primary country location of people who manage a page, and letting people know, are these people in the United States or are they elsewhere? We also give some additional features around filtering and sorting. So you could look at just the political or issue ads that are active. You could look at just the political or issue ads that are inactive. You could look at the potential reach and just filter so that you're seeing some of the ads that may have been targeted to the smallest audiences, really trying to increase the visibility of something that may have reached a few people. And we also allow sorting by impression volume, again, really trying to increase the visibility of ads that may have delivered small amounts of impressions and may have avoided mainstream media, but we want those ads to be bubbled up to the top and subject to scrutiny as well. So we also have something called the Ad Library Report, and that's the second tool in our three-pronged suite. And this is really meant to be an aggregate spend view of advertiser information for a country at a glance. So you might want to see, how many social issue, electoral, or political ads have been run in the US. Just how much spend on social issue, electoral, or political ads in the US is there on Facebook? What advertisers are the top advertisers in a particular country based on spend? What keywords might have been the most frequently used in search in that country in the last couple of weeks? We want people who may not be looking at the ad level specificity to also have tools to really understand the aggregate spend and advertiser ecosystem at a glance. So this tool is really designed for somebody who wants to pop in, see what the landscape looks like for the entire country, but not necessarily go into the specifics of one particular ad and the performance information or the creative for that particular ad. Again, the Ad Library Report is accessible from the ad library, that URL that I gave you earlier, and you do not need a Facebook account to access the ad library or the Ad Library Report. Finally, I know there was a question in the last session about accessing the underlying data. The third tool in our three-pronged suite is our Ad Library API. And this is a way of providing news organizations, regulators, watchdog groups, and others to hold advertisers and us more accountable by having their hands on the raw data themselves in order to do whatever pivots they may want to do that we don't provide visual aids for in our products. The requirements here are that you have a Facebook developer account, you complete the identity confirmation process that all advertisers have to do in order to run social issue, electoral, and political ads, and agree to our platform terms of service, which would be similar to any API access for Facebook generally. So with that, I believe I am done. Christina, hold me accountable unless I missed anything that you wanted me to call attention to. And I'm
All right, thank you, Ms. Schiff, appreciate it. Thank you to your team. Do task force members at this point have any questions for Ms. Schiff or her team on the Facebook presentation? Professor Wood.
I have a, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead,
Sorry.
Katie.
Sorry,
Oh,
Ms. Oglin.
oh, it's okay. Abby can go. Oh, okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. That was very helpful. I had a question about, so when someone purchases let's say a political ad, what parameters or targeting criteria do you allow? Is it more detailed than location, gender, and age? And if so, how specific are they allowed to get there?
So ads about social issues, elections, or politics have the same access to targeting features as other ads on Facebook. There is a restriction on geography, however. You are only eligible to run ads in a country where you've completed the authorizations process. So somebody who has completed the authorizations process, meaning you've confirmed your identity, perhaps you submitted a driver's license from the state of California, you are only able to run social issue, electoral, or political ads in the United States. We do not allow cross-border advertising. And so where you are authorized is where you can run the ads. In terms of targeting functionality overall, we ran a consultative process in the fall of 2019, talking to bipartisan political groups, NGOs, nonprofits, civil rights groups as well, whether we should make any changes to the targeting suite that is available. And we heard across the board that political ads are a vital part of the democratic process and how they operate as organizations and entities. And targeting practices are especially important for smaller campaigns and organizations to achieve efficiency, since they cannot afford to use bigger, more expensive media like radio or television. The vast majority of these groups we spoke to said our targeting systems were very valuable and explicitly asked us not to make changes. Ultimately, we believe that the answer to these challenges is not to suppress political speech, but to protect against abuse by those who would seek to interfere with elections, and to increase transparency so that it's clear who is trying to influence public opinion around elections.
So you said it's the same criteria as for others. So can you tell me a little bit more how detailed it can get? What beyond location, gender, and age do you all allow?
Yes, we can follow up with you on the specifics, but there are interest segments that talk about demographic or behavioral. So for example, if you, I just got a puppy 3 weeks ago, so I have dogs on my mind. But like pet lovers, right? For example, might be a interest segment that an advertiser could choose to select and specify as criteria when they go through the ad creation phase.
Thanks. So if I would love it if we could follow up somehow on that. So if you could let us know, I'd really appreciate it. And thank you for your presentation.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Oglen. All right, Professor Wood, I think you're up.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. I have questions on two dimensions. So first, you point out the trade-off between regulation and transparency, right? Like that's been a trade-off the Supreme Court's been willing to make for a very long time, right? We were in this kind of phase of deregulate, but disclose. And so it makes sense to me if you don't want to restrict the targeting criteria, but the problem is you're not disclosing the targeting criteria. And so we can't see who people are targeting. And that's really valuable information, of course. It sounds like you don't really want to talk a lot about that today, but that would be interesting for me to hear. And then also just since I have Facebook here, and since I've just finished a paper using Laura Edelson's data because the API is kind of difficult, I just wanted to let you know about query problems that are keeping people from actually using the API to the fullest extent. And that matters because you say you want to be held accountable, you want us to be able to hold political speakers accountable. So there are query rate limits. There's no way to search by date. There's no way to pull all the ad data for a specific advertiser in a specific date range. And that's just the list of things that we encountered when trying to work with your API. So basically, like, the rhetoric's really nice, but I think that there's still a long way to go. And, it's fine to, there's some pretty divisive things people could be targeting by, right? There's some like divisive pages that people follow. It sounds like you allow people who follow a certain page to be targeted and things like that. but we at least need to make that transparent if that's the side you guys want to err on. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I know it was more of a comment than a question, but I've been excited
Sure.
to talk to you guys for a while.
Sure. No, that's totally fair. Thank you for the feedback. So a couple things, what we do is provide transparency around the actual impact of an ad, and who was reached with it. But this is still a relatively new and young undertaking, and we're definitely taking feedback here. We do want to explore ways to be even more transparent with different types of data, but we won't do it at the expense of people's privacy. And one gnarly issue we do have to work out when we think about targeting transparency is, how do you prevent the reverse engineering of, okay, here is some information about who was targeted. Now let's go back to the ad, look at who commented and engaged with the ad. And now I've just exposed something about an individual who commented on the ad that was not otherwise known in the ecosystem. And that is something that we do not want to be in the business of. We do not want to be in the business of leaking information that is private about individuals that is not otherwise known. So we do want to provide more transparency. We won't do it at the expense of people's privacy. To the extent that we can thread the needle here and provide targeting transparency while protecting people's privacy and get creative about the how, we are absolutely exploring ways to do just that. And there should be more coming early next week with some news there.
Can you just give me a concrete example of that? So it sounds like you're trying to protect the target's privacy and not like the secret sauce that the campaigns are using to reach the targets.
Yeah, so take, for example, like a location example where you're targeting people who have a primary location as Palo Alto. And you now, if you go back to that ad and you look at the people who commented or liked or commented, you're now exposing that so-and-so who commented on the ad is likely to be located in a place that they may not have agreed or consented to disclosing to anyone else. So we have an issue with making information that's private about individuals public in ways that are non-consensual for the individuals.
Okay, that's actually really helpful. And I guess you wouldn't want to get rid of the ability to interact with an ad.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on its head. This is some of the trade-off conversation, transparently and in the spirit of confidence. Like, these are the conversations that we have. Like, would it be better to be transparent about targeting, but take away the ability to comment? But discourse and expression and voice are so important to the company. What does it look like to strip away core functionality of ads? Is that a trade-off worth taking? What about depersonalizing some of this information or anonymizing some of it? Maybe making it even more challenging to get back to the underlying ads so that the reverse engineering is extremely difficult to do. These are exactly the types of conversations we're having to both continue to push the envelope to be more transparent, but also protect people's privacy when we do it.
Yeah, that's helpful. Just one more thing while I've got you, and then I'll stop hogging the floor. The minimum bin you have right now for, I can't remember if it's impressions or I don't know if you would call it targets at all, but it's less than 1,000. Right. And I would assume, like, I was trying to study micro-targeting using your data, and I can't do it because less than 1,000 is the lowest bin you have. Your bins are in really funny sizes. And I would assume some A/B testing happens on much less than 1,000, but also some micro-targeting, kind of the micro-targeting we're afraid of, right? Like being really divisive and really hateful would also occur with less than 1,000. So that might be just as you move forward, thinking about what you're going to do here. And I guess as the task force moves forward too, right? Thinking about what that minimum bin size would be that would be helpful for the rest of us to think about how it's affecting voters and your users, right?
Yeah, so one thing I can share there, though, this is a bit out of date, but it's the last time that we looked into this. You know, advertisers are actually most commonly using broader reach because from an efficiency standpoint, it really won't help them achieve their goals in a cost-effective way if they target smaller audiences. So I believe the last time we looked at this, over 85% of spend by the US presidential candidates targeted audiences greater than like 250,000 people or more. And that was at the height of the primaries with all of the candidates and people really spending a lot on Facebook to make their case to voters. So you're absolutely right. We have like made additional information and filters available, like ranges for potential reach, so that you can try to find the ads that may have targeted audiences that are smaller in size. We can absolutely look at the bucketing that we've implemented there. One thing I will share is that we don't include ad performance information when there has been less or fewer than 100 impressions delivered for an ad. And again, that's for the same privacy reasons, where it's just too easy to reverse engineer information about people from the delivery performance that we're sharing when there are so few impressions delivered.
Yeah, I mean, so I get all that. I also like, you know, the data we were using had a bunch of outside groups and it had a bunch of like congressional candidates and things like that. And well over half of them were in that smallest bin. So anyway, like I understand that there are trade-offs, but I just wanted to push you guys a little bit more, but I will definitely see the floor and thank you for this back and forth.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Professor Wood. Do other task force members have questions for Ms. Schiff? I have a couple, but I wanted to let other folks comment first.
I have a quick question that might seem a little off topic, but it's not. So I'm really interested in how a lot of platforms have been putting their own social, political, election-related content up, and that often technically isn't captured as an ad. And so I'm curious, does Facebook voluntarily disclose that kind of content in your library, or do you have other plans for releasing it?
Yeah, this is a fun one. We care deeply about universal and even treatment to all advertisers, including ourselves. And Facebook and Instagram both have gone through the authorizations process in order to run ads about social issues, elections, or politics, whether that was, you know, get out the vote campaigns or other stances on social issues in the past. And those ads are in the ad library too.
What about some of the interstitial content that you put up? So, you know, reminding people that there's election, things that don't typically appear as ads, but instead are kind of baked into the app or the platform on web.
I see. Yeah, so we have, you know, voting reminders, but as you say, those are not ad formats. But Facebook and Instagram do spend a lot of money on ads on our platform, and those ads are subject to transparency. The ad library does not include any non-ad formats at this time, besides aggregate level information about the pages.
And is there any plan to disclose any of your interstitial content or any of that information for things that don't technically get clarified as ads?
You know, because I'm the ads person, I am not the best person to answer that question. I don't know if we house a repository of all of the voting reminders, for example, that we've ever shared in a particular district or state. But Christina and I can take that as a follow-up, because we definitely have people who are focused on those voting reminders and deadlines to register, things like that.
All right, a couple questions for you, Ms. Schiff. Do you require when in California, if a political committee that otherwise qualifies as a committee in California under our laws, if they want to advertise on Facebook, do they need to provide you with an FPPC ID number?
So we provide a couple of different methods for organizations to verify what and who they are. I believe the options are provide a tax ID, which we can validate off Facebook, provide an FEC committee identification number, which we ping the FEC public API and then retrieve the public record for. We allow other organizations to provide a street address, a phone number, and email and website, all of which we verify ownership of. And there's also a way to indicate yourself as an individual that may not be mapped to an organization at all. I am not aware of a way to provide the specific credential that you referenced, but I assume if you have that credential, you might also have a tax ID, or you would have street address, email, website, phone number information that would allow you to go through one of the other flows that helps verify you as an organization.
Right, and I do appreciate that, right? A political committee may have a tax ID, but they also have a separate independent legal obligation to register with the state of California and file certain disclosure reports. So they could have the ID number that satisfies your requirement, but they could be completely out of compliance with all the other disclosure requirements for campaign finance. And it sounds like they could still be running ads on Facebook. So again, I say that by way of just information and teasing it out. That is not a criticism of what Facebook is doing. Again, you guys are doing this yourself, kind of building the plane while you're flying it. You're doing a great job. So just kind of teasing out some of the things here.
Yeah, and one, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I will just clarify that, many states require different things. I recall in New York, certain entities are required to list a treasurer name, and there are fields to list additional information that you, the organization, may be required by the state to disclose. And we want to provide a way to facilitate that compliance, but we're not requiring it ourselves because we don't know which organizations are which in advance.
I appreciate that. And I mean, another thing that shouldn't be lost here is because you have created this ad archive, I suppose, we at the FPPC, we could look at that archive and we could double check that against our roster. And if we see somebody who hasn't complied, that could be a resource for us. So, this is there's two sides to this. Another question for you in terms of derivations of ads. I just want to get some clarification. Are all the different permutations and derivations of an ad included in the ad archive, or is it just the initial one?
So the answer is it's complicated, but mostly that every ad that delivers impressions is snapshotted and a copy is maintained in the ad library. So you are able to see the creative that ran. There are a few exceptions. For example, we have a product called, Dynamic Creative, where you may insert 3 versions of text and 3 versions of an image, and you say, let Facebook decide which combination of image and text is best suited for various audiences. And that we will be transparent about, where we will indicate on the ad itself, this ad may have appeared with slight variations, but it is really on the margin, and there are so many ads in the ad library. I don't think you'll have any issues finding all the different variations. One thing I did want to discuss specifically, because so much of what creates variation in ads are changes or edits to the target audience. So let's say, for example, you're running an ad and it is targeted to men, women, 18 to 65, in the Sacramento area, but you decide 2 weeks later that you actually want to include some interest targeting, like those who love dogs. Every time you make an adjustment to the targeting on our back end, it's a new ad. That ad has to go through ad review again. That ad, once it's reviewed, is snapshotted again. That ad will appear separately in the ad library. They might be grouped together as these are similar ads, but you can click through a carousel and you'll see from the delivery information that these are unique ads that deliver to different people because the targeting changed. So that is something that we are transparent about, and we show each ad even if it was subsequently edited.
Great, thank you. Slightly switching gears, in terms of your definition, and you're right, it is a mouthful, was it social issues, elections, and politics? Does that include, I know we had a conversation with Google earlier, under their rubric, they don't, if I'm running for city council, that would not automatically trigger political ad treatment. Under your policy, does it matter whether I'm a federal candidate, state candidate, or local candidate?
It does not matter. This is at the content level, whether the ads are about social issues, elections, or politics, agnostic of the level of government.
Okay. And I apologize, I haven't actually gone to the ad archive yet and tried to play around with it, but can I search by social issue separate from political issue?
So you can keyword search immigration or health or COVID or topic, but we do not at present designate which ads are social issue ads or which ads are election ads or which ads are politics ads. We keep all of these ads in an umbrella that is one and the same. So social issue, elections, or politics, and we don't sort of sub-delineate within that at this time.
Okay, that's helpful.
Just for what it's worth, when we looked into this initially, and I believe most of the ads overlap in multiple areas. Social issue ads tend to advocate for legislative reform, mixing the two or three sometimes in ways that are not so easy to tease out. So we've chosen to keep them all bundled and let the external community create any subgroupings that they choose.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And now, sort of the final question I had goes back to the conversation you were having with Professor Wood about the targeting data. And as I understand it, and I appreciate Facebook's concern about personal privacy. I mean, I have a Facebook account. I really appreciate your concern for personal privacy. When I conceive of this conceptually and philosophically, I have my group of friends. When I comment on my friend's post, my sort of expectation of privacy is that that's being shared among that group of my friends. I've self-selected who can see it, and so I am putting myself out there for that particular group. And so that's my level of privacy expectation. If I received an ad from a political campaign and I commented to that, I think at least personally, I philosophically conceive that as no different than standing on the street corner and talking about my opinions, where my expectation of privacy is essentially non-existent. I am now putting myself out there for everyone. Philosophically, though, it sounds like you, even when somebody comments on a political advertisement, which goes out to the entire world, the justification for not revealing or disclosing, I should say, the targeting information that an entity used to put itself out there is that concern, is the concern from the end user, even though the forum is kind of like that open public forum. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I just wanted to offer that perspective because on the one hand, I absolutely appreciate your concern with personal privacy. It seems to me that that's not personal privacy, at least in the traditional sense, though, when we're talking about the fact pattern that we were discussing with Professor Wood.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback. I think that one example that could be interesting to discuss here as a thought exercise would be sorry, that's my puppy, would be an organic post. so let's say it's not an ad, and a political entity makes an organic post, and that is going to be visible publicly. But then the page decides to boost that post and put some money behind it, whether it's $5 or $10. Now the audience for who sees that is bleeding a bit. It's the advertiser's target audience plus the original post that was public. And now there may not be that level of clarity around, when I comment, who really sees this. Is this something that is reaching just the advertiser's target audience, or is this message reaching the public community because it existed previously as an organic post? These are the kinds of edge cases where it gets messier to determine who are you really talking to and who has the right to expose information about people when there's even a shadow of a doubt about whether somebody consented to make this information available in a more public fashion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a difficult balance, so appreciate the conversation. Before we conclude this presentation, do other task force members have any follow-up questions for Ms. Schiff?
I mean, I have a proposed solution for that specific thing that she raises, which is you could either, well, I mean, for this specific one, you could just have them put up some kind of a disclaimer that says, this is going in an ad archive for 7 years. And, if you choose to interact with it, just know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great feedback, and I'm happy to bring it back to the team.
Well, great. Well, thank you again, Ms. Schiff. It was a great presentation, very, very informative for sure, and definitely appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. Ms. Rogers, your team, again, just thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, moving on to item number 5. This is identified formatting issues with the Disclose Act and discussion on how to rectify those issues. And we have Mr. Lang, who is the president of the California Clean Money Campaign. Welcome, Mr. Lang.
All right, can everybody hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm hearing an echo somewhere. Thank you very much for inviting me to make this presentation, and thank you all for your great work. That's really important to California, and to our supporters and everybody else who cares about the Disclose Act. So I have a little presentation. Let me figure out how to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Is there a way for me to share my screen?
I turned it on now. You should be able to share. Try it again.
There we go. Let's see. No, I'm not seeing the right one yet. Okay. I'll do it. There we go. Okay, slideshow. All right, is everybody seeing the first slide of the slideshow here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we want to talk about clarifying who's paying for political ads. Of course, the California Disclose Act, the California Money Campaign was sponsors of, but worked with a lot of you and many, many others to get it passed, and work with FPPC on details over the years to improve California's on-ad disclosure. Made a lot of progress, but it's got some things that need to be improved on as time goes on, of course. Our goal of the California Disclose Act has always been disclosing who really pays for political ads, making sure people can see who those real top contributors are, which of course matches the task force mission statement of California voters should be able to know who paid for and who's responsible for each paid political ad they receive. So a slide I borrowed from the Great Unearthed presentation at your last meeting. So here's a quick history of the California Disclose Act here in California. In the bad old days before the California Disclose Act, on-ad disclosures of top 2 funders, which was actually better than most states actually had, is buried at the end of committee names and generally hidden in fine print. So people had a very, very hard time seeing them most of the time. In 2017, after a 7-year campaign, AB 249, authored by Speaker Pro Tem Kevin Mullen and Assemblymember Kevin Levine, the original California Disclose Act focused on requiring TV, radio, and print ads for ballot measures to prominently show their top 3 funders with defined backgrounds, font sizes, colors, and things like that, so they could really be clear. And you can really see the top 3 funders, sometimes one or two, depending upon the format. For online ads, it slightly punted on it. It kept it very simple to say that online ads must just show who funded this ad on the ad somewhere. This was really envisioned for graphic ads, and then be clickable to a website that would have the actual top 3 funder information on it. It also required the top 3 funders on ballot measure ads to list the original funders, even if they pass through multiple layers of committees, if those funders were earmarked for a specifically identified ballot measure or committee. So not just show the whatever front groups it was passed through. That was, I believe, one of the first, made California the first state in the country to do that. Followed up in 2018 with AB 2188, Mullen, the Social Media Disclose Act, to require social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, and Google to disclose the top three funders of ballot measure and IE ads in consistent places. Then in 2019, AB 201, Cervantes Mullen, the Text Message Disclose Act, to require disclosure on political mass texts of who paid for them, no matter who they came from, and required ballot measure and IE texts sent by non-volunteers to disclose their top funder, because before that, it was the Wild West in terms of mass text messages. And now we're in progress working on tentatively called the Disclose Act to fix some of the abuses that we have seen and address some of the issues that have been identified that the original AB 249 and the bills just were never really meant to handle. Okay, so here's an example of a California TV ad disclosure on a ballot measure ad before AB 249, a 2010 proposition. There's the fine print advertising, all caps. If you look in there very closely, you can carefully see major funding from CA Business PAC, sponsored by CA Chamber of Commerce and Small Business Action Committee PAC, but very hard to read in the 5 seconds it was on the screen. And so people had lots of problems with that. Here's another example that I think is even worse, just in terms of, look how they used a light gray font on a kind of a white background, making it extra hard to read. Lots of tricks like that went on before AB 249. So this was the intent of AB 249, so that all TV ads, this was an actual example used for the legislature in passing the bill, to require that all television ads for ballot measures and independent expenditures show in the bottom 1/3 of the screen for 5 seconds the name of the committee at the top, underlined, to try to separate it from the top 3 funders, and the top 3 funders each on separate lines, so people could easily see them. And in this example, it's pretty clear to people pretty quickly who the top 3 funders of this ad were. In fact, California Clean Money Campaign and MapLight a number of years back did a study on voters, showing them example videos that include this type of Disclose Act disclosure and the old style disclosure, and compared which ones they were better able to recall who the top funders were. And no surprise, as you can see, people were much more able to recall the top funders with the Disclose Act formatting. Unfortunately, after it was passed in 2017, we worked very hard, and some people complained we tried to work a little bit too hard at setting exact font sizes, colors, backgrounds, and things like that to make it clear to look as close as possible as we showed. But in the 2018 primary, we saw people taking advantage of the language and making the ads look like this. So we had defined, for instance, that the fonts be Arial font, 4% of the height of the screen. We didn't say at that time that they couldn't be super duper duper narrow, which they did in this example, making it very hard to read in 5 seconds. Here's another example. They did the same thing, and they also threw on extra information and took advantage of loopholes to make the names really small. So there was a cleanup bill that Assemblymember Mullen worked with us on in 2018 that fixed these issues. But they turned out, and that helped a lot, but they weren't the only problems. So here's an example that happened in the general election in 2010 that we think that we've gotten a lot of complaints on, and we're seeing other examples like this. And the FPPC was complaining about this a couple of years ago too, that a lot of ballot measure and IE ads, it looked like they were purposely making the name of the committee super long, as you can see here, so that along with the committee major funding line, it took up 4 lines, and then therefore good luck in 5 seconds being able to read the top 3 funders. Very much a problem. We've received lots of complaints about that, I think, for the obvious reasons. So one of the things we want to do with this Disclose Clarity Act is to fix this sort of problem. We don't want to ban committees from using long names if they want to. We just want to make sure that if they do, or in every case, that people are much more easily able to quickly hone in on what we believe, what the legislature believed when it passed the Disclose Act is the most important information, which is the top 3 funders. So this is our current proposal and thinking for the Disclose Clarity Act for TV ads. Exact same information, but we would propose requiring the top 2 contributors to be yellow, a different color that stands out, and separated by half a line from the committee name. Therefore, as you can see, this makes it a lot clearer, I think, and easier for people to easily zone in on who the top 3 funders are. This compared to what they actually did. Takes a little tiny bit of extra space for basically that half line of blank space, but virtually nothing, and in most cases that won't be the case. So here's a case where the committee major funding took 2 lines. I mean, the name took 2 lines. Prop no on 15 this year. This would look like this, and that would still fit in the bottom 1/3 of the screen. That is the standard space required by the Disclose Act. I'll mention that we're also considering AB 249 made it optional for contributor names to include terms like incorporated or committee or political action committee or their shortcuts, but didn't mandate that they not be used. And you can see in this current example, Avalon Bay Communities Inc. Lots of times they use things like Inc. What we're thinking right now, and I'd love to get your guys' feedback on this and the rest of these when we're done the presentation, that Inc. doesn't add much in the vast majority of cases. Corp doesn't either. So we're considering in this new bill barring the use of them for top contributor names, so that it's just the real key names and not distracting names. So that's a proposal. So that's one thing that's what we're thinking on standard television video ads as a possible solution to this issue. Then there's the issue that that great Unearthed presentation to the task force in your last meeting pointed out that now there are a number of video ads in different formats than the standard television style formatting. And the normal Disclose Act television formatting doesn't work very well, as shown in these 2 examples. So we're exploring possible better solutions for that. In this example, it actually should work pretty well with this new sort of keep the major funders down below in yellow with a little bit of separation. But what we're considering here in this, and again, we'd love feedback on all these issues. On the left, you can see the actual ad that they pointed out that has the entire committee name. Ad paid for by no on Prop 15, Stop Higher Property, a coalition of California homeowners, taxpayers, businesses, etc. They choose to put that information in. When it comes to television ads, since that's an official part of the committee name, and the FCC requires the full name of the committee that pays for any advertisements, even separate from California law, we have to have that in there. That was the advice we got from the FCC and others. But for online video ads, the FCC has no such requirement. One thing we're considering is giving committees the option, if they're worried about space as they might be here, to give a shorter version of the committee name that would be enough to identify the committee to voters. You don't need all that homeowners, taxpayers to know this is the no on Prop 15, this particular no on Prop 15 committee. Or alternatively, just include the FPPC committee number. Right, so in this example with these even more narrow ads, we give them the option, again, if they want to have the whole committee name, they can. It'll just take more space. If they want to use a shortened version like on the right, they can do that. Or if they just want, or if that's too long and they just want to include ad paid for by FPPC committee and then the number, they include that. With the most important part from our view being the clear listing of the top 3 funders with the yellow separate color, etc. With narrow ads, you especially also have this problem that longer top contributor names may wrap. So we're considering 2 different solutions here. One would be in the middle case, actually allowing them to end the top contributor with a ... And part of the reason we'd allow them to do that is all forms of online ads require some way that they can click and go to a website that has the full information, and that'd be true of the full committee name as well. Or if they choose not to do that, then to at least separate each of the top contributors with a bullet or a right caret, something like that, so it's easier to see the top 3 funders separately. They don't all run into each other. That's a proposal there. Okay, so that's what we're thinking for television and online video ads. Now we have the problem of regular online graphic ads. The current AB 249 rules are that every online graphic ad has to say who funded this ad or paid for by requirement, and then you click on it and go to a website that would have the full disclosure, full committee name, and full top 3 funder information on it. The code only says that must be done in a contrasting color and font size that is easily readable by the average viewer for the duration of the advertisement. These are actual screenshots of advertisements on the Yes on 22 campaign last year. I dare anybody to quickly find those disclosure informations very easily on these ads. It is really, really hard. On the bottom left one, you can kind of see who funded this ad. If you at the top right, the top full-size screen one, it's way buried at the bottom. I might suggest that this would be something that the commission might consider for enforcement, because it completely stretches the imagination of being easily readable by the average viewer. But in general, we're concerned that easily readable by the average viewer is likely to this sorts of gamemanship that's problematic, which is why for the rest of the Disclose Act, we put the exact background requirements. So what we're proposing for these type of ads, for smaller graphic online ads, where there's not enough room to list any top funders or anything like that, just require the who funded this ad to be underlined and either in a white box with blue letters, so it's clear that it's clickable to a website where you can get the who funded this ad information, Maybe give them the option to have a black background with a white with a white font, similar to the video ads, and require it to be at the bottom of ads, similar to TV and video ads, so that it's in a standard place. That's one of the things we're considering. But when it comes to larger graphic ads, and these are much more common, especially for really big, well, it's mostly for really big, expensive campaigns. They use these large graphics that take up, you know, the whole left side of a newspaper website, or across the whole top. There actually is room in our belief to put more of the committee name or an FPPC number and at least one top funder. So we would propose for ads that are large enough, and we still have to work out the details, and I'd love to work with the FPPC and others on exactly what the thresholds would be for this. But for ones that are large enough, like these would be, to again require the disclosure to be at the bottom in a solid box, have the committee name, or if they want to put the full name of the committee at the top, they could. If they want to use the FPPC number, they could. But then at the bottom, and again in a different color that stands out, like here, give the name of the top one funder. Here's an example of one that's a little bit longer: Essex Property Trust and Affiliated Entities, and then a little more link, so it's clear to people that if they click that ad, that more link, that they can get to a website with full disclosure information. So that's how that would look in large vertical graphic ads, and here's how that might look on these are large ads that go across the top of the screen that we see sometimes. So again, at the bottom, you could include the name if they want to, a short name of the committee if they want to, but making clear in a different funder, probably blue, so it's clear that it's clickable, the top funder, and then they can get more information. And give them the option to do it either in a one-line form or like 2 lines, as in the bottom example. So those are that's what we're thinking of for large graphic ads. We have open questions and very interested in feedback on what to do about online GIF ads, where it just shows kind of one picture for a few seconds, then another, and then another. We're kind of halfway between videos and online graphic ads. So maybe the same requirements for graphic ads, i.e. a relatively small box with one top funder shown all the time, or maybe they should be treated more like video ads, the box on 1/3 of the screen, but only for 5 seconds. I think we would lean more towards the first one, treating them more like regular graphic ads, but would love to hear people's thoughts, and then other types of online ads needing disclosure improvements. So that's what we're thinking so far. This bill is currently in development. Our plan is to try to pass it through the legislature this year as a follow-up to the other Disclose Act bills, and look forward to your questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lang. Appreciate it. Let's begin with, do other task force members have any questions or comments for Mr. Lang on his presentation?
I have just a quick question.
Yes, Ms. Loughlin.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Do you currently have any bill that has been submitted yet, just so we know if there's any AB or number to follow?
There is not a number yet, but intent language will be submitted to Ledge Council today to get that ready, and then we're seeking feedback from your task force and others before we kind of finalize our actual draft language. But yes, there will be a bill, and it's just not yet.
Thank you.
I had to do a tiny bit of child-related things while you were presenting, and so I may have missed. Sorry, by the way, hi, and I really like the presentation. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
I may have missed it, but since you asked about other types of ads, how about sponsored content? How about like the Mike Bloomberg type approach? Because I think that, I mean, it worked for him and well, I don't know, it got him a lot of press, right? So I kind of think it might catch on, that sort of thing. And I don't know if you've included that in the bill or if I just missed it, sorry.
I have not included, and I'm not sure I'm aware of what happened with what was done with the Mike Bloomberg example.
Sorry, that was bad teaching on my part. So, so Bloomberg paid influencers, I think. I feel bad because it's going in the public record. So like maybe I'm getting it a little bit wrong, but my understanding is that he paid influencers to kind of get hashtags going and write about his campaign in glowing ways, and that there wasn't much disclosure or disclaimer associated with that, just because it was a federal campaign. The FPPC doesn't do much in the social space on that. And so, it's a chance for California to kind of get ahead of it. But I don't know, it might be something worth considering. Like, I don't know if you would want to require it in their image, kind of like you've done on these other ads, or if you would just want to have a requirement that the influencer gives some of their characters to do this, which then could raise speech concerns. I don't really know, but it's worth kind of thinking about.
Yes, no, that's a great idea. We had not intended to have this bill have that, but it certainly could be and maybe should be a vehicle for that. So yes, I'm very open to exploring that, and love to have further ideas that you or others might have about that. Absolutely.
I'll see if I can find some resources just to have them in the library and stuff. Yeah,
that'd be great. Thank you.
I had a question for you, Mr. Lang. Some of the ideas in the slides that you have, and I think it is challenging when we're taking traditional disclaimers or disclaimers that have been applied to traditional forms of campaigning, billboards or leaflets, and trying to take that same level of information and translate it to a digital environment can be challenging sometimes. So one of your examples for the sake of this discussion was, just having the FPPC ID number and then the top 3 funders, right? So you've made the choice that those bits of information are sufficient. What data and what studies, if any, are you looking to support the notion that the top 3 funders, really that is the most important information to be getting out to the voters as opposed to some other type of information?
Well, there's I guess it's just kind of I'm not looking at any particular studies there. We had done some studies with the MapLight, as we mentioned, in terms of the effectiveness of top 3 funders. There's a question. I know some places want to disclose 5 top funders, some only 1. One of the things that we looked at in our early concerns with the Disclose Act was that in the 5 seconds that you have for a television screen ad, that's just too many for people to be able to remember or focus on. We did do some initial studies early on of where most of the money was coming from. The fundamental belief of the Disclose Act, of course, which goes along with most disclosure, is that one of the most important pieces of information to voters, and we've done polling on this, and there has certainly been a lot of polling that knowing who the top funders is one of the very most important pieces of information for voters. So that's kind of research we've looked at. When we looked at amounts actually spent, typically the large bulks of what was spent on ballot measure campaigns or independent expenditures were usually covered by the top 1 or 2 or 3 funders. So that was the compromise that we took when we did the actual study of mocking up how these disclosures would work with the original television formatting with top 3 funders. We wanted to make sure, again, that it was something that if people saw the ads without our saying, hey, study the top funders, that they would actually be able to recall them, and they were. So it's a mix of polling. That's what voters say they want to know, and then what's practicable to actually show them in the time and space we have for disclosures that they'll actually remember and recall.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Mindful of the fact that we do have a 2-hour time limit we scheduled the meeting for. We are approaching noon. Do other folks have any final questions or comments for Mr. Lang?
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Several meetings ago, we talked about a identifiable icon that would be used across all sorts of formats and platforms, and that wasn't discussed in this. And I'm curious, is that something you researched and intentionally chose not to use, or it just hasn't come up? Is that something you've considered?
I would absolutely consider that. I missed one of the task force meetings, so I might have actually missed that. So I'd love to be pointed to where that discussion was so I could look at it. Certainly we would consider something like that. Was that in the December task force meeting?
I think Ms. Wagner did bring that up a couple meetings ago. There's a big lag in our meetings from when we first started to when we sort of came back together in December. But we did talk about a timeline last month when we met, and part of that timeline was at the February meeting that we were going to try and have a speaker speak about symbology and those types of approaches to disclaimers. So if we can get somebody lined up in February, that's the time that we'd have that presentation.
That will be great. That'll be plenty of time to influence this bill.
Great. All right. Any parting comments for Mr. Lang?
This is Amber. I have just one comment or observation. You mentioned one of the possible ideas in terms of the names of the major funder to actually bar the use of terms like Inc. or Corp, for example.
Right.
It reminded me that we had an issue with a major funder who their trademark name is actually all capitalized, and that put them actually in violation technically of the Political Reform Act.
Oh, interesting.
So they were either not using their trademark name or violating the Political Reform Act. So I would just, if you're requiring organizations to not use their full name, it might be putting them in some kind of a trademark gray area.
Thanks for pointing that out. I'd love to see if you point me to that exact example. That'd be great. And then that would be certainly something to clarify that if the trademark name is all caps, then certainly we should allow them to use that for the contributor name. I would agree.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm actually going to, we have one remaining item on our agenda today, and that's the trends and emerging issues. That's something that our staff was prepared to do, but as we talked about in December, that is also a topic we were going to start off with in February. And so I'm going to move that presentation to the February agenda, mindful of our 2-hour time limit today. So at this point, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I will second that. Ms. Apostle. Hang on, you guys. Technical-ish difficulty.
Mr. Brokaw?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Melby?
Aye.
Ms. Wagner?
Aye.
Ms. Soglin?
I'm just an alternate, so since Ms. Wagner voted, I don't vote.
Okay. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Chair Matich?
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. We'll see you next month.